Last week on Always Be Connecting, we were talking about reframing stories and how sometimes in your life you might go through a hard time, but if you zoom out, you might realise that that's going to play in really nicely to Act 3. This week, we are talking about the term sonder. And sonder is the profound feeling of realising that everyone, including strangers passing in the street, has a life as complex as your own, which they are constantly living despite your lack of awareness of it. And I that's such a great word because we all get so consumed in our own book of life that sometimes we don't realise how many great stories are passing us by through other people. So I thought a great person to talk to that about would be a filmmaker, and we are talking today to Graham Steele in LA. How are you, Graham?
Doing very good, thank you. That's a beautiful word.
Isn't it? Well,
it's amazing.
I was like, I was doing a little intro today, and Grace, our studio producer, was like, "Oh, that's sonder." I'm like, "What's sonder?"
Fantastic.
But,
I love that.
We all have our own roller coaster ride that we're living, and enjoying and being enthralled by, but we don't realise there are plenty of good books out there.
Yeah, it's kind of it's very philosophical, isn't it? You know, we're kind of just. So I've had a long-standing, not long, but 10 years, I guess, spiritual practice, meditation, and affirmative prayer, not non-religious, but it's that whole idea that we're just really living our own story. It's we create our own reality, and
what led you?
And everyone else is doing the same thing, really.
What led you to that sort of like towards meditation and that kind of
inner self? I think it was the uncertainty of this business, probably, and just looking for a non-religious way of feeling connected and grounded and confident and aware of what my purpose is and was and supposed to be. And so meditation has been that, and it really took me as a director. I'd been shooting for so long as a director of photography, doing I grew up with the ABC in Australia and then BBC and as a cameraman, camera person, and DOP, and I realized that I'd be, you have this camera back in the old days, as they were quite big, and it was like this prop that kind of held me back from being fully immersed in what the story was. You're a part of the creative team. Yeah, it was kind of interesting, and then you're always looking through a viewfinder, but you didn't have this true peripheral vision or higher vision of what the story was, for me anyway. And so that, after finding meditation and some teachers and stuff, I realized that's not me anymore. I don't want that. I want to be a part of the bigger picture and the bigger story. And meditation really kind of helped me realize that. And so then I started writing and directing and creative producing and executive producing.
Because they say that with I remember reading about the photographer from who photographed the falling man and possibly like war photographers and stuff, how it separates them from reality.
Right.
Having that lens. But then also I think it goes the other way, is that why would you be looking at it? Like, why would you be looking at someone else's story without the lens? Sometimes it draws you in a little bit more. Do you find?
Yeah, no, it's fascinating, but it was just for me, I think, at that particular time. Again, you brought up the GFC before, and it was around that time as well, and I'd gone through some trouble, and so I think I was just looking for something different, a different way of expressing myself creatively, and the business. I came to LA, and the business had changed so much. There was a lot of reality TV, and I didn't feel settled at all.
Mm.
You know, I'd come from documentaries and BBC and really kind of, you know, editorially sound stuff. And I just, you know, being behind the camera just wasn't doing it for me anymore. So I just, you know, it was timing and yeah, but I see what you're saying. It's interesting, isn't it? For me, I just could see the world in a different way. Yeah, it's a paradox. Totally.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you think meditation taught you? How do you view being behind the lens now?
What it's taught me, which is
it's
very
a big
difficult.
Question.
No,
this is straight in there.
Good. I love it. So, in the last 2 years, I've been doing this. Well, 2 years ago, when the war started in Ukraine, I went out to Poland and started working on a big feature documentary about Ukrainian refugees.
Wow. Okay.
I can't talk too much about it because I'm under contract, but I met the most incredible group of TV professionals, practitioners. My director of photography, she's from this famous film school there. The sound recorder, she's does a lot of great documentaries. And each person in their own right was just this incredible practitioner in the film production world. And I think 15 years earlier, I wouldn't have been able to be the kind of leader or director or whatever that just was able to let go, allow every single person in their position to just thrive and do their creative expression.
It's an acquired skill.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's quite phenomenal. And coming from the camera background, I don't want to say my DP, she's a dear friend of mine, but the director of photography, Zuzana, is so damn good, right? That she would film stuff and see things. And I'm in my mind, I'm looking, and I used to be a director of photography and shoot for 25 years. And I wanted to butt in and say, no, let's do it this way. But then you just go, oh, let's take a breath. And she does it, and it's phenomenal.
Isn't it funny? Yeah. It's
catches
like,
things.
If sometimes in conversations, if you pause, someone else will say what you were thinking, or someone else will say something a more interesting point. If you take that moment to stop, it happens anyway. It happens without you.
And it's such a wonderful surprise. Usually. And I would sit in the edit suite and just go, wow, this is fantastic. And it's completely the opposite of how I would have done it myself if I was behind the camera. And it's much better. Yeah. And meditation and all my spiritual practice, I think, enabled me to be that. Because really embracing, right? Like you've got a team there's a team of you in your company, and you embrace, you know, it's kind of corny, I guess, you know, but filmmaking is a collaborative art, and it really is. You know, even those river films that I shared with you, you know, the editor, Camilla, she's a Polish filmmaker, lives in Dublin. I just walk away. I bring her on the shoots with me, which is unusual so she comes out on the shoots, and she's phenomenal. Like I just go, okay, here you go. And she does the first, second, third cut. And it's like, it's beautiful, you know? So you just kind of step back.
And how funny that we're here to talk about stories and we haven't even got into in front of the camera yet. We just we're talking about the stories behind the camera first.
Yes, yeah.
Because it's
all part of it, isn't it? Life. It's wonderful.
Must be hard to learn how to have a certain amount of direction, but have that inclusivity. So is that fully down to meditation? Have there been some lessons along the way?
Yeah, and I think, you know yourself, you've got a great company there, and leadership and whether it's directing a crew or whatever team, it's, you know, just letting go of control. You know, we all have this ego that we carry around. And of course, you know, most of us will go through it if we're leading. You know, you're doing a shoot, whether it's a $50,000 budget or $1 million budget, whatever it is, there has to be someone who's going to make the decisions. And I love pink and they love blue, but, you know, it's going to be pink. or whatever, you know, whatever the decision has to be. So it's just that fine line of, you know, inclusivity, okay, listening, but we have to do, you know, I think I'm going to go with this. And that's for me is meditation, because I get to stop, listen to what I feel or what I see as the vision for the project, and go forward with that vision. And just letting go of a lot of the details too, you know.
So I don't meditate, but
yeah,
I feel that I'm a work in progress. Is there a I've got this now moment, or are you always somewhat making mistakes, treading on a toe here and there? I didn't listen properly there. Is it always like that?
Always, yeah, because it's constant, and I think that's the beauty of it. But what I've come to realize is that you can't be down on yourself. Like you know, I think I had a fight with my son 3 days ago. I got angry.
Yeah.
And he got angry at me, and I got angry at him. And then you go, you know, years ago I might have got down on myself or got, you know, but you just apologize and you go, you know what? You can still make mistakes. There's still a lot of, you're constantly growing, you know, constantly. It's constant. And same with when I'm working, make a mistake. I might have missed something, but you can always say, I don't pretend to know all the answers, have all the answers. You know, even if I'm doing an interview, whether it's with a professor, a scientist, or a brain surgeon, whatever the person does, I'll ask every single team member in the room, from the sound recorders to whomever, if they have any questions, because everyone, you know, we're all kind of one of the, you know, in this creative space together. So constantly growing, constantly unfolding.
So I think part of being a creative, I always liken it to being a journalist, where if we're telling people stories, which was what we are, that's how we connect. Like you know, then you got to find it out. You got to, you know, what's happening here. It's a lot of asking questions, listening, sort of like figuring it out. Like, where is that? Where's the interesting point? Where's something that's going to be beneficial to other people? You know, well, do you agree with that? Have you got a process specifically of unraveling something that people are going to enjoy?
Yeah, and it's funny because it's come up a lot lately. I'm developing a featured documentary around a big subject matter, the cosmos and our cosmic origin.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a lot of big questions in this show.
There's a lot of stuff going, right? And that is such a big topic. But I've presented it to a couple of executives recently, the last few months. Most times their eyes roll around the back of their head.
Yeah.
And then my partner, who we're doing the pitch and, you know, throwing it all against the wall, right? And she's going, what if, you know, I think she'd asked me, just devil's advocate, you know, but they're not going to like this and this angle and this and that angle or whatever. And I just finally realized, you know, it's our vision, right? And part of being a creator and a creative and an artist, whatever you want to call yourself. You know, I imagine myself, I just come from Holland doing this whole thing around Van Gogh with the rivers. I thought, Vincent van Gogh didn't sit there wondering what other people thought of his artwork before he painted. He painted purely from vision. I call it grace. You know, it's you know, and so it has to be something that we go, this, of course you're willing to flow and shift and change, but there has to be an essential vision for it, a flow to it. And I think you just have to be steadfast with that, believe in it.
Sure.
And then be willing, of course, to stay open as you go along. But for me, that's it. It's like I'm not thinking about what other people are going to think about this idea.
Yeah.
It's hard when you're trying to sell it and get money, but
well, but like maybe if artists, creatives, maybe another word for us is connectors. Where we're a bit of comms, we're communicating.
Yeah.
So perhaps the problem lies in the fact that when we're inspired to make something, create something, do something, connect something, it's because it's missing.
Right.
It doesn't exist. Whereas if you're going to sell something or show someone something, they've got a yardstick that they're measuring it against. And if it's not there, if it's not as successful as this one, or they can't compare it, they can't put it in a chart somewhere.
Yeah.
Then it's sort of the data-led part of things. Then they're nervous to understand from your creativity, because Van Gogh made what he wanted, but didn't do very well from it.
Yeah, he took a while to make. Well, good point, right? Commerce versus art, right? That's the rub. That's the rub, and we're constantly asking ourselves, shoot, I've got to have a job. I need to work.
Yep.
What does that compromise look like? It's a bloody good question. I've fallen really deeply in love with documentaries again, and places like Denmark and these countries that really value the art of storytelling through a medium like documentaries.
Yeah.
And giving filmmakers and creatives the opportunity to make a living.
Who in Denmark is appreciating it? Is it the government
couple of countries, companies. There's a doc festival there, and I just was doing research today, trying to connect to some producers there. They've made some wonderful films, and it just was a standout country or territory to me.
Sure.
As being has placed that up, and England as well. Like the United Kingdom, I still think has a strong support for, because independent docs are hard to find here. Like Netflix are pumping out a lot of stuff, talking about the data and the commerce-led stuff, but it's mostly, I hate to say it, but it's really mostly garbage. There was a phenomenal documentary called How to Kill a Tiger that was nominated for an Oscar this year, from a Canadian filmmaker, about this Indian court case. This young 15-year-old girl was raped in the village, and the father carried on and sought out legal justice for her, which was really unheard of. Like they were shunned, they were almost attacked by the villagers. And it was a really monumental film, and the filmmaker, she was brilliant. She immersed us. She was an Indian-Canadian filmmaker. Her husband was the DP. I think he was Indian-Canadian. They immersed themselves in this village, into the story. It's a beautiful film, and I don't think you would have seen that film in American screens if it hadn't been nominated for an Oscar. So finally it made it onto Netflix. But
yeah,
I think I'm going off track, I think. But I think it's a great question, commerce versus art. And you're right, everything's data-led these days. It's a challenge.
And awards as well, you mentioned.
Right. Right.
There's plenty of beautiful stories have been told out there that we'll never see, because they don't have 5 stars.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's crazy. It's a shame. And I think I was kind of buried in looking at these producers and production companies in Denmark today because of that. Because I think I went to Belgium last year, I spent about 6 months in Europe last year. Polish, they have a massive support for documentary filmmakers. Not a lot of money, like America, this is where people can make money and really support themselves, but there's still a system to uphold that realm of storytelling and filmmaking, finding those stories you're talking about that may not otherwise have been told,
And what do you think is the value of it? That sort of, what's Denmark getting out of it, and what do people get out of the tiger story? Sorry, I forgot the name.
Yeah, How to Kill a Tiger.
It's why are these important to us, and why do we think it's important to other people?
It's a good question, isn't it? I think as a species, I think we need to see, you know, the condition of, because essentially, I mean, my film, Cosmos, is all about our shared oneness.
Yeah.
You know, we need to look at ourselves from a cosmic perspective, not from I'm American, I'm Texan, I'm Australian, I'm British. You know, we need to
Zoom out.
zoom out, because when you zoom out past the moon and past the solar system, we're nothing. You know,
Yeah.
you really, like,
Finding
you
our
look,
keys doesn't matter to
we're
the
the
stress
little
of
blue
it or
dot,
whatever.
right?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that we need to, I need to see more of these stories where I see the humanity, right? Whether it's tragic, there was a tragedy in this story, but there was this human element that gave this father and the mother the will to fight for what was right, you know, to get their daughter justice, you know, which in any other, and maybe the filmmakers somehow help move that along. I don't know, but I think these sort of stories and documentaries are, you know, very important. You know, I got into the business because I wanted to work on stuff that maybe uplifted and told the story of injustice, or, you know, and I think that's the way to do it. And even though they're subjective, but I think they're critically important stories to tell.
Because last week we were talking to a lady who was Christian, and we were talking about reframing an experience. So you have a bad experience in your life, and it can be very hard to live that experience. And then a few years later, you realize that that experience gave you these gifts that
Right.
you can then, and then a few years later, you take those gifts and you do something extraordinary with them and make the world a better place, or have impact, or enjoy your
Right.
life a bit more, or however your story goes. So, and I wonder with the she called that God's plan, by the way. And I
Nice.
wonder with your Cosmos thing, it's the same thing in a different context. So in her context is religion.
Yeah.
But with you, it's the same premise in a
Absolutely.
translated in a different way, that
Yeah.
we all are living these stories. And you know, some people say that, like, you come down to earth to learn a lesson, and then you know, sort of Matrix style or something, you're sent to earth, you're going to learn about X, Y, and Z while you're on earth. This is when you're going to die, and then you're going to come back and you're going to be enlightened or whatever. So if everybody is on earth to be enlightened by this great story that's being told through your life, then if we just experience our own here and right now, you learn a few lessons, you're all right, you can go back to wherever you came from and be a bit wiser. But then
carry on.
If you can spend your time here absorbing other people's stories as well, all these different obstacles, all these different moments of joy, struggle, then I don't know where you go. You go somewhere afterwards.
Yeah.
Into the next life.
Into the next life, back again. Hopefully you've done your job here, your purpose, lived out your purpose.
Yeah.
But you know, this is great stuff. And you know, of course, religion. Okay, I don't really have a comment, but you know, whatever works. But for me, what that person may have been talking about, from my point of view, it's the idea of the chaos theory, isn't it? Where we think things are chaotic, but really, when you again zoom out and see our lives and our children's lives, our grandchildren's lives, whatever it is, it's actually all working in perfect order. That's the chaos theory.
Yeah, okay.
It's all working in perfect order, because in cosmic time, or in the length of time, in the period of time, it's all going to work out. When we're experiencing in that moment, it's a bloody nightmare, or it feels like a nightmare.
Yeah.
But like you said, everything pans out. And I think it's hard to stick with that, though. It's hard to, ride with that. And that's maybe where religion and my spiritual practice supports me in that. Yeah.
So what
else were we talking about? I can't remember. What else did you talk about? That was good stuff.
We've gone through some big arcs here.
Hey? Yeah, it's great. I love it. It was so good.
But
I think, no, that's right. You're sorry to interrupt. It was so good because I think it's this is the idea of oneness too. I think people's stories do matter to us if you're open and available to it. Of course, we can live in our own bubble, care for our own families, our own immediate families, but truly we are all connected. I believe that. My film that I want to make is called Stardust. We all are made from the stuff, from exploding stars. We're all connected. We are all one.
You think we're the same soul living in different?
No, I think we're all different. We're different souls. I think we are essentially one. We are. Yeah. We come from the same cosmic origin, I believe, and many ancient teachings do as well. If you inquire further into indigenous teaching, for example, they have a cosmic heritage. There's a lot of mysticism. Ancient Vedic wisdom is extremely ancient, is connected to the cosmos. They talk in billions of years and trillions of years, and so I think that's why, if you're open to it as a creative or whoever you are, you feel that person's pain or their joy or whatever it is.
Yeah.
There is a deep connection, I believe.
And with our stories, there's a lot of misunderstanding. Hey, like, if you have an experience in your family with mental illness, for example,
right,
and then you see something else happen in your community on the news or something, you can connect the dots a little bit better. So that's just like in the sort of immediate vicinity. But so to understand all these stories, it is to understand the context of everything. So you can live with understanding and live with better connection.
Yeah.
And things
be
like
compassionate, be empathetic, right?
Especially interesting, because you said that you were shooting some stories from Ukraine and understanding what is happening in the war amongst a sea of not knowing what to believe.
Right.
Is possibly a critical, a really critical part of storytelling.
Absolutely. It's mind-blowing, actually, isn't it? I live in Beverly Hills. My kids go to Beverly Hills High School.
Oh, yeah. Right? Are you in 90210?
And
is that your postcode?
90210. We're in 90212. We're in the cheap section. And the craziest 15 minutes of the day is the parking lot of Beverly Hills High School, when you see all these kids leaving in their brand new $200,000 Mercedes-Benz G-Wagons, or their Range Rovers, or their whatever, right? And all that to say is, then you get on a plane, you fly to Poland, then you're on the border of Ukraine, and it's such a trip. And you can stay in this kind of, not being critical, but it's interesting to maintain that level of awareness and compassion and understanding of our sisters and brothers' experience from another place, and put yourself in that deeply, at a soul level. and it's a wild ride. And think that there's not that many, there's not that many people who do it. And I think going back to journalists, I've worked with some incredible journalists who that's their background, is connecting with people immediately, understanding their story, disseminating that story, delivering it to the public. And it's a phenomenal skill.
So when you're making documentaries, what are the key points of making something? What do you need to include? Does it need, like Disney always includes a villain. What does a documentary need?
You know what? I just continue to tell people I don't claim to be very good at any of that stuff, other than being a really good connector and someone who sees a story from the 70,000 foot level or 100,000 foot level and putting all the pieces together. I think for me, one of the biggest things is connecting with individuals, groups, whomever. The one I just did in Holland, I think I sent you this. It was a short documentary on the river there. And it was such a convoluted piece to put together. And when I was presenting it to my friends who commissioned the films, there were so many different pieces that came together. But for me, I just saw this great story of this tiny little region of this river where all these incredible groups of people came together to give an actual shit about the environment in a big way, in a serious way. And there were so many stakeholders. And for me, I had to be the one. It was my story, my vision, to connect all these people, have them believe in the story that I wanted to tell. And that's what I do. And I like to get on the ground, meet people, get them invested, because I really care about their stories. We had a farmer in the story. Her and her husband run this incredible organic farm that's right on the river, so all their vegetables are grown. They have a stake in the quality and the care of this river, this tiny little river that runs through this little bit of Holland. And then there's the local, a guy who runs the Van Gogh National Park. And then there's the industrial side of things where these people, it's such a powerful area economically where they can't develop any houses or industry until they've taken care of the environment. So you're putting all these stakeholders and people together to tell this story in 12 minutes, right? And then people have to get it and understand it and feel it, and it got such a great reception. But then you just take your hands off the wheel. Then you just kind of make the phone calls, book in the people, and and make sure your team is excellent and better than you are. And then that's the only advice I have to offer is surround yourself with brilliant practitioners. Like I said, my director of photography, my associate producer, my drone camera person, he is the best in the world, I think. He's brilliant. My editor, she's phenomenal. So then all you have to do is just talk to people. And it's funny. I read, like him or love him or hate him, Clint Eastwood, not sure what to think about him these days, but he said something, what his practice is with his editor. He's been together with his editor for so long. He makes the film, then he goes and plays golf, and the editor just does their job and has their own creative vision and input,
Just leave them, stop looking over the shoulder.
Yeah, take your hands off the wheel, like let it go. And certain aspects, like this, obviously when you're on the ground, like I've been in many different positions in different projects. The branded content stuff I've done, I had to do a big project in Rome a few years ago with a cast and crew of 300 people. That was a really tricky. Again, that was for a client, a big cell phone company. That was a really tricky project to manage. I had a great producer, but it took a lot of, decision making and firing directors who were big Italian directors who weren't understanding the project, and then you're dealing with clients. So that's a different role. You kind of have to really put your serious hat on, and you're a corporate guy almost. But for the documentary stuff, I think for me, it's just really just getting to know people and having them believe, not in a fake way at all. It's completely, really get into it. The first day I went there to this farm in Holland, I'm walking along the river and I was overwhelmed by it. I was in tears. I'm crying because the environment was so beautiful. The farmer and her husband was so beautiful. You just want to do them justice.
Sure. Well, maybe this is your frustration with reality TV, because reality TV is to show people in a bad light.
Yeah,
and
it's fake.
You want to show people in the glory of their story.
Yeah,
in
tell their story and be positive.
Yeah.
And I think that, I think it's kind of underrated, optimism and positivity,
It's hard to monetize.
It's very hard to monetize. That's good. That's brilliant. It's definitely hard to monetize. And we did that years ago for this big branded agency I direct a lot for. They're fantastic company, Shareability. They did some of the biggest viral videos when viral videos were just starting, and they had a client, Hyundai. How do we say it in Australia? Hyundai. They have a
my team were wondering, because I said, this is an Australian guy who's been in LA for a little while, and they were like, I wonder how he pronounces his, what was it, O's, or is it now?
Oh,
no,
so confusing.
Yeah. Nah.
I don't know. No, I don't know. I'm so confused most of the time. I go, what do we say for that word? And I'm like, oh.
Sorry, I probably took you off your train of thought.
No, I have no idea. It was probably useless anyway. I remember. Hyundai. What do they say? Hyundai. They have a children's cancer charity. And this was maybe 10 years ago. And there was this big thing like, can we tell this beautiful, truthful, honest, sad, but then ultimately uplifting story, this 3-minute social media piece wrapped up, in this mini documentary style piece. And can it be positive and uplifting and emotional all at the same time? And it turned out that it could be, and it was very uplifting and well received. And but it's a gamble because yes, positivity may not monetize as much as the drama and the fake drama, and
I do have a lot of faith though in future generations, like
yes,
Gen Z, Gen Alpha. They've grown up with a certain amount of distrust, and they're not interested. They're not. They know. They understand clickbait better than we'll ever understand it, and they
don't want bullshit.
They don't want bullshit whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I think that we do have an opportunity, as someone who looks roughly the same age as me, to as this generation, just pass on a little bit of the groundwork.
Yeah.
For them
I
to.
Agree. I agree. I
better.
think it's great. There's some great stuff, great people, great kids out there doing incredible work, and it's it's very positive.
You can't have this time anymore. Like, we was watching The Dark Side of the 2000s or something like that. It's a series. It's all about the dark side. It started with The Dark Side of the Ring. It's a great show, by the way, if anyone wants to watch. But to start with The Dark Side of the Ring, it's all about wrestling and like what was going on behind the scenes and all like the bad stuff. Or not necessarily bad stuff, but like having a good look at how we acted in those times. And so I think they did an episode on Lindsay Lohan. And like you look back on it now and you're like, why did we allow that to happen to Lindsay Lohan.
Right.
You know, that
Yeah,
level of
awful.
scrutiny when she was in her early 20s.
Yeah, she was a baby.
People looking up her skirt, taking pictures.
It's terrible.
You know, like, so like it's a different time, and now sort of like that's in the past. I do think that we can look back on those stories as well, sort of stories from the past with retrospect and stuff.
Yeah. What was that show called? What? Sorry, can I just write it down?
Dark Side. It started with the Dark Side of the Ring, and then they did the Dark Side of comedy, the Dark Side of
That's
the
great.
90s.
Is that an Australian show?
I think it's American.
Huh.
So they did one on Screech from Saved by the Bell.
Oh,
Screech
right.
was Screech.
Okay, got it. Canadian.
Screech has got a great, sad story.
I'm gonna watch that. Yeah, he did have a sad story.
Yeah, so he was kind of ripped apart by having a public life, but when you sort of hear his story, you're like, oh my gosh, who was looking after him? Do you know what I mean? Like, poor
terrible.
guy.
Isn't it strange? Terrible. I'm glad we're in a better space now. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, I think, and all the scrutiny, and you know, it's good. You know, it's kind of needs to be questioned. There was some horrible shit that happened.
So, like, taking it back to a bit more positive vibe, just quickly, do you want to tell us much about the cosmos, or is there only so much you can say?
Well, funny enough, my partner did find these. She was giving me some gifts, and she found this in her drawer. Stardust, an old pair of matches from Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah? Sure. That's from awesome.
I know.
That's very retro.
Fantastic. It's on my I have a lot of crystals and all that sort of stuff hanging out down here. And so, but I mean, the cosmos, I came across this story through my uncle, Dr. Ted Steele, who is an Aussie scientist, extremely controversial chap.
He's got a great name.
He's got a great name. He's a brawler. He's a bit of a brawler. He's a wonderful. I love him. He's a great man, and anyway. You look him up. He's been around a while, and he during COVID put me onto a theory called panspermia, which is the seeding of our planet through comets and asteroids.
Sure.
And the planet was seeded through this constant bombardment from these asteroids, hundreds of millions of years ago, and that's what brought life to Earth. Well, he brought it up during COVID because there was a theory. I don't want to say theory because I believe in it, but him and this very well-known Sri Lankan professor, who's a Cambridge-educated astrobiologist, a wonderful human being. His name is Chandra Wickramasinghe, and he and his mentor, Sir Fred Hoyle, who was a legend in science in England, Cambridge-educated chap and professor. Sir Fred Hoyle jokingly coined the term "the Big Bang" as a joke in the 50s or 60s, and so Chandra and Fred, in the last maybe 30 years of Fred's life, were prolific in writing and submitting scientific papers about panspermia, proving this theory. And fast forward, when COVID happened, Uncle Ted was, and Chandra and a bunch of other scientists had shown this theory how COVID may have come to Earth through this comet that hit central China in December 2019.
Okay.
And brought with it the viruses. Well, the virus. And it's not a theory that's been picked up by the mainstream. And it's not very popular at all. The animal to human jump theory took off, and then the lab leak theory took off. For me, that theory of panspermia made a lot of sense because the way they explained it was, a large area in China where tens of millions of people were infected at once. The spreading of the virus can't happen that quickly in such a short period of time to that many people with person-to-person spread. And it happens because this virus comes into the atmosphere from right, hits the atmosphere and comes down in the rainfall or through through the atmosphere, and then you catch it. You catch a death of cold. And it spread millions of people that way. They had a lot of instances and examples of why that theory worked. That made sense to me. And as an inquisitive person, I thought, oh, well, that's not too far out. It's, there was some mathematical equation that proved that it couldn't have been an animal to human jump. It was impossible. And the Chandra and Fred, so Fred wrote a book in the 70s called Diseases from Space in the 70s, where they tracked pandemics, Spanish flu and all that, and they showed that how these viruses have always been coming in and impacting Earth. They come in, they impact a certain location, then they go away.
Okay. Because on a micro level as well, that happens. Because I read a book called Guns, Germs, and Steel on how
Columbus,
and them going to America infected America because there was germs of our Earth that went from country to country.
That's right.
And killed off a lot of people. So
wiped out a lot of people. So
that's an interesting theory that
and so that made sense to me.
Space connection.
That made sense to me.
Yeah.
And so I've been going back and forth with this subject matter for the last 4 years, I guess. And I finally went to England last year and met with Chandra at his home in Wales. And he's a wonderful human being. He's about 85 years old now, I think. And he's a true scientist and dedicated to to the truth, and having the public be able to receive as much information as possible from credible sources, not just backyard scientists who don't really have any credibility. So the story for me has been unfolding, and I've been trying to piece it together and what it means to me, and what it means is that we, for me, what it means is that all of our tribalism or nationalism or patriotism is all bullshit. And essentially, again, we zoom out, we see the little blue dot, we're all the same. And yet here we are fighting and skirmishing and murdering, thousands of children and women, and people being mistreated for what, it doesn't make any sense. And so I was kind of,
the wind continues to blow.
Yeah, and I'm bringing this this scientific theory, or what I believe is the truth, into a philosophical realm, backed up by some very legitimate, well-heeled global scientists. And but it's got a philosophical story. So it's not all serious. We're not trying to hammer home some scientific lesson. It's a philosophical story about us. I've called it Stardust, the story of us. And it's a big story, and I need a lot of money to make it. I need commerce.
Yeah.
I need to monetize this thing. But I believe in it. I'm very passionate about it. It's a labor of love. And it's Chandra. I went to Sri Lanka with Chandra in December with his family. Sri Lanka is a Buddhist country. He grew up with the background of Buddhism. And in that tradition, it's not difficult to understand or appreciate a cosmic connection. With us Anglo folk, the Judeo-Christian backdrop and the colonialism of, we're English or whatever, doesn't really allow us to have a cosmic origin story. It flies in the face of that. So it's interesting. I want to bring to light Asian and Eastern and other ancient wisdom, indigenous wisdom, you know, because it's telling the same story. You know, largely it's been ignored by the Anglo-Judeo-Christian West. This kind of ancient wisdom of indigenous, Vedic, Asian. You know, we've largely ignored that wisdom, thinking that we're the ones who are carry the intellect and the truth, when really there's a lot of other stuff that's much older.
Yeah.
It's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot. I got to shut up. Tell me to shut up.
But we'll never get close to understanding the bigger picture,
right?
Without listening.
Yes.
And
yes,
I think that I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. Every episode that we do has got, when we're talking about connecting, it all comes back to
Beautiful.
listening. So I think the same with you, of like listening to different cultures, listening to science, listening to your practice, listening to religions, listening to everybody, you know, perhaps it will lead to a better, more understanding.
That's beautiful. It's true. I agree. It's a beautiful thing. Well done. I think that's lovely. And I think that will lead to, you know, we say in my spiritual community, you know, we call it sacred listening. And you have to do almost 4 years of study. You're not becoming a priest or a monk or anything, but you're just doing a lot of different courses and meditation and what have you. And sacred listening is a big, big part of it, because most of us don't want to stop and, as you say, listen. And that's wonderful that you're doing that. I think it's really important. I think it will lead us, you know, the dirty word that a lot of people, especially when you're trying to tell a story or make a film about, a lot of the dirty word is utopian or harmony. And I think that's something wonderful about that. We need to embrace that. And I think what you're saying is this idea of really, truly listening will bring us to this place of a harmonious, you know, which is great and should be what we should all aim for. Yeah. So thank you for saying that. That's really wonderful.
If we're all blown seeds onto this floating rock.
Yes, that's right.
What else are we going to do apart from try and live together?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I can't see the name of your show. It's called Always Be Connecting.
Always Be Connecting.
Kind of cut off. That's great. There we go. Yeah, I just couldn't see it. It's cut off a little bit. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's awesome. That's so good.
I don't think we've got as philosophical as this. Is that even a word? Philosophical, thank you. Philosophical as this on an episode. But I really enjoyed it. Like, it's a journey for me, because like I think I said to you before we started recording that like last year I was feeling a bit disconnected.
Yeah.
So this year is about connecting, and like,
wow, beautiful.
It's my therapy, listening to all these stories. It's really
oh, well done. Yeah, good for you. I'm really grateful. This is just what you said then about that. Listening is connection, and I hope more people tune in and hear you say that. It's great.
Yeah, that's been a really interesting chat.
Well done.
Is there anything you want to promo as we come to the end? Look out for Cosmos.
Yeah, I mean, look, if there's anyone who's extremely wealthy, who has deep pockets and long arms, and wants to give about $1 million, I could do it for $750,000 US dollars, and who really is passionate about doing stuff. I believe it's the most important story of our time, because it really zooms out and really takes a look at all the issues. Why should we care for our beautiful mother planet? Yeah. Why should we care about each other? Why should we care about indigenous wisdom?
Why should we care about ourselves?
why should we care about ourselves? And it zooms out and sees all of it. And so I really think, I'm saying quite confidently, it's the most important story of our time. It is the shift that is happening. It's the next, it's called the next Copernican revolution. That's what it is. You know, people need to stop and understand there's a different origin story. When Copernicus was telling us that we are not the center, that there's a solar system out there, and we, you know, there's been many giants in history that have been literally burned at the stake for saying stuff that we know 200 years later is the truth.
Yeah, sure.
Anytime
anyway, you say a person is not the center of the universe, they're not the main character.
Yeah. There's going to be trouble.
There's going to be trouble. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
You guys are great. Thank you, Lindsay. This is wonderful.
Thanks, Graham. Appreciate it.
I love it. Nice. Thank you, everybody behind the scenes, pressing buttons, turning lights on.